Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. Foul. Oh, they can't believe
that. Good time of day, everyone. I'm Ethan Castle.
I am Benjamin Castle.
You might be thinking, back so soon? And we are. This is episode 164 of Americans Watching the Footy, and we are jumping right into the round 7 preview because we've got Wednesday footy this week and double Thursday footy.
First time we've had Wednesday footy since the first game of 2022.
We had an interesting day.
Yeah, well, was the first night of Passover here, so prepping the Seder, taking that up to our grandmother in Mills Alley.
Yeah, that's irrelevant. What's relevant is what happened when we got back.
So as usual, when Ethan gets back at the house, he calls for Brian. Now, Brian usually comes racing down the stairs. He didn't.
So I was thinking, like, man, he's just, like, way upstairs and, like, super asleep, just, like, out cold.
Well, he was way upstairs because he had gotten scared when a raccoon entered through the window mesh.
Yeah, there was a fucking raccoon in the house. Brian's fine, just was scared shitless and understandably so.
Yeah, but I went upstairs, went to the second floor, saw a stripe thing, just like, that's too big to be holy shit, that's a raccoon. Immediately yelled at it to get out, and it jumped back up and left the way it came through the window mesh and had torn.
Took some convincing to get Brian down. We think the raccoon might have eaten some of his food because his bowl was like not even crumbs, completely empty. And he was sniffing around the area and his giant food bag had been knocked over. So that's what we've been up to.
Yeah. Ethan cleaned out his bowl and his water, steam mopped the kitchen floor. And I think Brian Harambe is going to be just fine.
If he's a little on edge for a while, though, I don't blame him.
He was definitely on edge during the last recording session, too, yesterday.
Well, that was just him just doing normal stuff, though. Just kind of running around and, various shenanigans. So that's what's up with him. That's what's up with us.
I would almost say already the raccoon is our main character for the week.
I have a really good main character pick, and it has nothing to do with that.
Is it as good as The Fly?
Yes.
So last year, Zach Brown ended with the big ones. This year, it starts with the big ones.
And it ends with
a whimper.
I think a couple that could be interesting, a couple that could be wet farts. I looked at this round and I see it as a clear 4 best games, but I'm curious how people order how much they're intrigued by each game. So I have, and I have had Benjamin do this as well, ranked each game, 1 being the most exciting, 9 being the least. And we're going to, as we preview each game, give you our ranking. And personally, I don't know what criteria you're using, but I'm not just automatically excited for games because they involve teams with great records. I'm excited for the games with a lot on the line, which may not necessarily be teams with the best records. So yeah, what's at stake will affect some of this.
Nice thing about being in round 7 now is that we are done with the initial wave of buys that the opening round necessitated. So everybody's played 6 games. We can actually use the ladder for something now, other than Andrew Gaze's great readings. And that means we start round 7 with 16th against 6th as Richmond and Melbourne have their normal Anzac Eve clash. Only time they're meeting this year.
Last year, these teams doubled up. These won both. First one, they won by 18 despite playing 18 on 22.
And despite Richmond having more scores.
Yeah, Richmond kicked 11-12 in that game to Melbourne's 15-6. And then in round 20, the D's scored the final 38 points for a 130-98 win. I want to say that was an afternoon game. I think I remember this game, but Max Gawn basically was the fourth quarter.
Max Gawn dominated both of these games.
Yeah, it was a Sunday mid-afternoon game, which seems like that middle Sunday slot, which we haven't really had much of lately and still won't have this week. That always seems to be a spot for the D's.
That was also a game in which Melbourne found what appeared to have been a great new forward structure because Harrison Petty kicked 6 straight. Jake Melchin kicked 4 straight.
Oh yeah, that was that game.
Jacob Van Rooyen kicked 4 straight. So that's 14 of their 20 goals right there.
So the way things have worked out, we are recording this a little bit after 2 a.m.
So a little after 7 p.m. Melbourne time, which means we could do Mad Libs.
All right. So if this is your first time tuning in, or you just hadn't listened to some of the recent preview episodes, the way Mad Libs work,
They're not really that mad. They're just libs.
bold libs. The overlap of people who will get this reference is like 0, but basically one of us has the other guest's team changes for the week by filling in the blanks. That's really all there is to it. It's fun though.
All right, Ethan, are you ready?
Been ready.
Richmond has welcomed back Blake from injury.
Jacob Hopper.
Yeah, we already discussed that one. Finally back from his knee injury. And recalled ruckman
Sam Naismith.
Sam Naismith to help combat Melbourne captain
Max Gawn.
on Anzac Day E.
Okay, you didn't need to have me fill in the blank for Max Gawn. That was kind of up.
Yeah, that was like the $200 Jeopardy clue.
Oh, not even. That was like, are you smarter than a 5th grader? Or no, not even. That was more like Refo games.
Ooh, yes. The amount of Australians who will understand that is probably 0.
A game show where people were getting their cars repoed, but if you could answer some questions right, you'd get to keep it. And they were really easy questions, but they like woke you up at 3 a.m.
Oh boy, 3 a.m.
and were outside with a tow truck about to take your car.
Yeah, the show didn't last long. But yeah, Naismith coming in over Samson Ryan for 1.
All right,
But you can think about what else that means. Meanwhile, the Demons have dropped veteran.
Ben Brown?
Yes.
We're doing the Weeda Brown again, damn it.
What do you mean? Who's in then?
Well, let's see. From Fox Footy's team tips, could be former basketballer Tom Fullerton or could be Josh Shackey. And we know that they're getting Kazi Pickett back, and Shane McAdams should be in the VFL.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm going to go with former basketballer Tom Fullerton.
Well, let's see how this goes. The Demons have dropped veteran Ben Brown, but live wire forward.
Isaiah Pickett.
It actually says Kazi in this article. Kazi Pickett is back from suspension. Hopper and Naismith are joined by former skipper
Dylan Grimes.
in the Tigers lineup.
Yeah, Jacob Van Rooyen's kicking 5.
I think as soon as we talked about this in the car on the way over to Mill Valley, I think I was the one who said Van Rooyen's kicking 5.
Yeah.
As well as a young midfielder.
As someone who didn't play a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, he's played 3 games this year, but only 1 full game.
Okay, then I gotta look at their round 5 team here.
Yeah.
Make sure I'm not missing anything.
Well, I mean, he clearly wasn't in round 5. I can tell you he's freshly 21.
Ooh, I don't know.
Stout?
Let me look at their full list. Hang on. See if I can figure this one out. Let's see. I'm gonna guess they dropped Hugo, but they brought in... He didn't play against the Eagles.
Yeah, right.
Sam Banks?
Yes, young midfielder Sam Banks.
I would not have guessed that without looking at the roster.
Okay, by the way, Hugo's in.
Hey!
Yeah, there's nothing about Hugo in there. There's also nothing about Tom Fullerton.
So it's Josh Shackey?
Nothing about him either.
Are they keeping Fullstrip in?
Let's continue. Blank, this is still about Richmond.
Okay.
Blank is out injured.
Someone who played in their prior game.
He got injured in their prior game.
Did he get subbed out?
That would be the dead giveaway, yes.
I don't remember who got subbed out, but Ryan Mansell? I don't remember.
Was Jaden Short his calf?
Shit.
Yeah, so you can see why this game is number 9 for me.
It's also my number 9.
Number 9.
Jaden Short, calf, is out injured, while 3 players have all been dropped for the team that lost to West Coast in round 5. And I can tell you, Hugo is not one of them. The man is in.
Let's see. Kane McAuliffe?
Kane McAuliffe is actually the first one listed. Excellent.
Jacob Kazitsky?
Kazitsky, yes. You probably got that because of Naismith coming in.
And it just seemed like a likely candidate. And Seth Campbell?
No, young Tasmanian remains in. I think Adam Uze clearly likes him.
Tom Brown?
He's also good to go, thankfully. And
Tyler Young.
No, Young remains in, and I like that they're backing him in to try and be a better one-on-one defender. Brown, by the way, great field kick. And before I forget, this is the Uze Bowl. Keep going.
You better not fucking take Mike Kelty out.
No, of course not. He got a polished turd vote. I was actually surprised to see this one out.
Camden McIntyre?
No, it's a younger player.
Ooh.
Tyler Sonsi. Sub.
Okay.
So, Kane McAuliffe, Tyler Sonsi, and Jacob Kaczynski have all been dropped from the team that lost to West Coast in round 5. Pickett is joined by mid-forward.
Pickett is joined by mid-forward. Spargo's still on the injured list, isn't he?
It's not Spargo.
Yeah, I don't see. Bailey Laurie?
Yeah, Bill Laurie's in. He was subbed out of the opening round and has not seen AFL time since, so welcome back to Laurie, adding to that midfield mix. Want to see how they might use him in comparison to Kate Chandler, because Chandler's still in. So Pickett is joined by mid-forward Bailey Laurie in the squad, as well as key defender
Marty Hort?
No, 4 remains out.
Was Adam Tomlinson already in?
He was an emergency.
So I'm going to say Adam Tomlinson.
It's not.
Okay, well then,
The younger name.
key defender, you say?
Oh, yeah.
Jed Adam? I'm just scrolling through the list. Daniel Turner?
Yeah, just goes back. Another Albury product like Connor O'Sullivan there in key defense. Daniel Turner played just his 4th game of senior football and first for the season. Has had a nasty run of injuries. First year forward,
Colton Falstrup?
makes way for Pickett,
Yeah, that's not a surprise.
while injured defender,
Christian Salem?
hamstring, is also out of the side that lost to Brisbane.
Is that it?
Yes, it is. So for Richmond, in Banks, Grimes, Hopper, Naismith, out, Kaczynski, McAuliffe, Short, Sonsi. For Melbourne, in Laurie, Pickett, Turner, out, Brown, Salem, Folstrip.
Yeah, this just seems like they're going to do another Weeda Brown.
I don't really think so because there's no obvious other tall to fit in there. I mean, they're backing in Harrison Petty to have a much stronger game after being non-existent for 3 quarters, and they're adding another mid-sized player into the mix with Laurie instead. So I'm curious as to how exactly Laurie fits into that structure there, with Kazi also being in there, with Chandler there as well, and I really like how Chandler's continued to develop at the top level. The Demons are 28.5-point favorites, and I'm completely fine with that.
I don't see this one being all that close. Richmond's just, they weren't great to begin with, and with all these injuries, it's really rough. I don't think we're going to get too many more weeknight Richmond games this year, which is a weird thing to say. Are they scheduled for any more? Let's see.
Round 13.
At Adelaide, which is technically a bye round. It's an 8-game round.
Yeah, I guess that's Thursday then when the extended round.
And then, of course, the Friday of that round is the Bulldogs, because the Bulldogs have a stretch. Rounds 11 through 13 for the Bulldogs, Thursday, Friday.
Just like old times.
Highest, more Luke Beveridge under the spotlight. I'm here for it. All right, so yeah, we both rank this game
Number 9.
at number 9. It's just, there's not a lot of suspense in this. I mean, the scenario with Richmond winning would be amusing, but I think there are other games that seem lopsided where the alternate outcome is way more compelling.
So with that, we move to Anzac Day itself. It's going to be very, very tough for Essendon and Collingwood to beat the crowd of 95,179 that they set last year. It was an Anzac Day record.
I think they'll be around 90 again.
Yeah, I think so. But that was the second largest home and away crowd ever. And Nick Dacos won them that game.
I think the fans were ready to do.
Yeah, the fans were ready to do. Nick was ready to do a 40 disposal showing with 2 goals in the 4th quarter. The second was the game winner. Collingwood, 7 goals to none in the final term.
And then that kind of carried over to the next time they played, a 70-point Collingwood win where Essendon kind of just sat everybody because they were done for.
Yeah,
Between those 2 quarters, the 4th quarter of the first meeting and the 1st quarter of the second meeting, Collingwood outscored Essendon 93-5, 15 goals to 0.
and in that second one, none of us really batted an eye.
Yeah, it was just like, all right, this is kind of embarrassing. Let's get it over with. Yay, Tip is going to get in.
And actually got a lot of the game after an injury. He was a sub. It was his finale. He didn't get a shot because fuck you, Darcy Parish. And speaking of Parish, I guess he's kind of under the pump.
which seems hard to believe. I think he's sitting there thinking to himself, man, I should have gone to Geelong. But I think we're pretty happy with where things are right now. Peter Wright is back from suspension, and someone's got to make way. And it's tough because Harry Jones has played well. Harry! It sounds like Sam Draper's in this week, though I would totally be okay with managing him. Although I guess matchup-wise, when you're dealing with guys like Darcy Cameron and Brody Majek and Will Hoskin-Elliott and Mason, it makes a little less sense too. I think we're in for a curveball on some sort of list thing for Essendon, because yes, they have won back-to-back games, but it's not like they've looked great while doing it. Last week is such a tough one to break down.
Some doubt this past week for Essendon was Nick Hind in favor of Varna, Elijah Sadas. Hind's versatility could lend him to just being the sub.
And I think Sadas might get dropped. I was disappointed in how little he got to actually play.
Yeah, so I guess both of them are at risk there, especially with Dylan Shield playing in the VFL and getting a lot of handballs away.
Maybe he comes back in as a sub.
I think that's a decent idea with management there. This is going to be a very, very tall look for Essendon, and I'm looking forward to see how they navigate it. I would imagine that Harry Jones does stay in. Would be nice to have a second tall who can play off right. They can take some of the heat off each other, because that so often was a problem with Essendon these past couple of years, is that Wright was so clearly the top target, and they didn't really have someone who was able to be that solid number 2 option. They tried Sam Wiedemann for like a month and it didn't work. And now that Harry is healthy again, hopefully he can just be that guy. Chance also for Matt Guelphy to maybe get back in with his cap injury and start the season pretty strongly. So another wrinkle in the selection there. Wouldn't expect Collingwood to make too many changes, if any, even with some good performances in the reserves, despite the 15-point loss to the fucking Coburg Lions. Up the burgers. I mean, been a few weeks since we've seen Oleg Markov in the top flight. Charlie Dean is making a stronger case, especially now knowing that Nathan Murphy's not coming back. But I think Collingwood is probably just going to stand pat largely. I don't think there's going to be anything crazy there. Ethan, where do you rank this out of your 9?
I'm actually putting this one at 3rd. I've got this at 3rd because I think this should help us answer how good both these teams are. I think the last couple weeks, Collingwood have looked like they're back, but as we've seen in past years, a slow start has lingering effects that kind of fuck up your whole season. We saw it with Port a couple years ago. We saw it with Geelong last year. And then Essendon, they have one legit good win and one that might be good this past week. Like, even if the Saints do end up good, which I'm not ruling out, that was not a game where the Bombers looked good. They just ended up winning it.
After double checking my list, I have that at number 3 as well. I think we really need to figure out just what the hell is going on with Essendon. I think the Pies are going to be fine in the long run, but how can Essendon do on the biggest stage of the home and away season? And where exactly does everybody fit into their tall hierarchy? That's the big one there for me in terms of the actual list management for that. Hey, we got 2 games on Anzac Day.
Thursday doubleheader. Oh, this is going to be fun. I go to trivia night, and then I come home, and then I watch footy.
Pretty typical time, 7:25 p.m. local start. Anzac Day, 3:20 local, so for Americans, 1:20 a.m. Eastern, 10:20 p.m. Pacific. Fox Sports 2 for Essendon and Collingwood. Unfortunately, only Fox Soccer Plus for the Thursday nightcap. Out in the ACT, the Giants and the Lions. 7:30 p.m. local. For Americans, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 a.m. Pacific. I have this as my number 4 game.
I also have this at number 4.
This is less exciting than I thought, that we have everything the same here.
This game is obviously much more important for the Lions, though I do think it's gotten slightly more intriguing as we now know Jesse Hogan is free to play, which I really don't understand the rationale behind.
Are they just regarding the punch or strike or whatever it was is just happening in kind of a cat fight with Lewis Young?
According to David Zeta, they found there was no more than negligible impact.
I'm confused.
I guess maybe then they think Young kind of sold it a little.
You said the reaction was delayed.
Yeah.
That's a surprising one there. So we're waiting to hear back on the Toby Green case. That's happening as we are recording this, for after knowing that Hogan was free to play, just because I think there's less list intrigue as a result, because then it's much less likely for someone like Max Grzelski to get in.
Okay, so my logic is the opposite. I think this game became more intriguing because I think the Giants should be more competitive now. Because I think, like, as competitive as they look against Carleton, if you take out Green and Hogan and you're already missing Cornelio and Taylor, that's just, it would take a lot to win that. As much as I like this team.
I was trying to put the Giants' list intrigue of competitiveness against Essendon trying to prove something to themselves and everyone.
And edging.
I feel like that's worth like Beavis and Butthead type laughter there. This is the third straight year that the Giants and Lions will be meeting at Manuka Oval. They had never met there before 2022.
I mean, you make it sound like it's impressive when really they haven't been around for that long.
Still strange that they're meeting there for the third straight year. I think that's worth noting. The Lions have won 5 straight head-to-head since 2020, so they won both in the ACT, including a 21-point win last year where the Lions switched some things up. They let Jack Payne play as a free defender and had Harris Andrews playing on Harry Himmelberg. Now, Himmelberg has been sent back this year, and with Sam Taylor staying out for this one, that's going to be even more likely that Himmelberg stays in the back, even though Leicalier asserted himself over Himmelberg in terms of matching up against Harry Mackay this past Saturday.
I also want to make a little addendum to one thing you said. The Lions have actually won 6 straight home and away meetings, but they lost by 3 at the GABA in a semifinal in 2019.
Ah, there you go, because straight sets Lions was a thing. You probably remember one play from the meeting last year.
Yep, the Charlie Cameron toe tap, one-timer, one-touch, whatever you want to call it, goal of the year nominee.
It was amazing. And Will Ashcroft upstaged him the very next week.
Last year was such a good year for goal of the year nominees, and like there were at least 4 or 5 last year that have been better than anything we've seen so far this year.
We're waiting for good nominees in both categories.
Look, we're only a quarter of the way through the season, so I'm not gonna
panic yet.
Yeah, we've had a billion great almost marks and a few really good reserves level and state level marks.
This past week for the Giants, it was the Josh Kelly story in the midfield, our clear polished turd winner with 3 goals from 23 and being one of their most effective players at the immediate stoppage. Tom Green got more of the ball, but Kelly got out more and did more when he was able to get into space. That's going to continue to be very important, especially with a down game from Xavier O'Halloran, maybe bringing his spot into question. He had done well last year as being the next guy up when Stephen Cornelio went down, but he was subbed out at 3/4 time this past Saturday. Brett Daniels is a test with some knee soreness. That's a very important one to try and keep in, especially if Toby Green does stay out. How they decide to move that half-forward group around will be a watch with Bedford in there as well as Daniels and maybe bring in someone like Darcy Jones for a debut. Or do they go with Toby McMullen, a name that we heard a decent amount near the end of last year's home and away?
On Brisbane's side, one change is necessary. Oscar McInerney's going to be out. He got concussed. Darcy Ford is the obvious replacement. I guess Henry Smith is a fringe candidate. I think it's just going to be Ford. I don't know if they make any other changes. Maybe you manage someone. Cal Achi has been a little quiet, so if you want to get Jackson Pryor or Connor McKenna in, he's a possibility for it.
Surprised we haven't seen McKenna since his injury at the start of the season, so that seems like a spot where you can definitely bring him back in. Achi is another one of those real versatile players, especially strong in the air. And maybe there's a spot for him to be dropped to the sub. You know, with how much Chris Fagan talked about positional versatility at the start of the year, that seems like a way to really maximize the impact of the most versatile players. Just have him ready to fill that gap whenever it may come up.
Last week's sub was Jared Lyons. I thought he was all right. Maybe I would elevate him and maybe I'd make Darcy Gardner the sub because versatility.
You also said that maybe Gardner could pinch hit in the ruck if really needed.
Yeah, I think it would be better than throwing Dunkley in there. You know, Danaher should be your main backup option. But yeah, I think Gardner at least has the body type for it. Payne does too, but I don't think he's mobile enough yet. When these teams played last year, he was the kind of roving defender, so maybe there's something there. Payne was really bad last week. He's going to need to be a lot better. Fuck do we know? Giants favored by 1.5. That line has not changed since Jesse Hogan was announced in. You know what? With Hogan in, I kind of put this game on the same level. I think it's hard to differentiate between this and Essendon Collingwood, but I think I'm going to give Essendon Collingwood the advantage just because we might see like 90,000 people at a game. Whereas this, I mean, capacity is what, 13,000? But in terms of actual on-field stuff, I now think of this game more highly with Hogan in, because I mean, if the Lions were to drop this one, they'd be in really deep shit.
By the way, Max Lawton brought Schnitz into the office for David Zeta.
Teamwork making the dream work. I support this.
The most recent update from Zeta, the tribunal are having a preliminary deliberation about something before they commence their actual deliberation. I hate my life.
I hate my life.
I hate your life too, dude.
Actually good post-movie SpongeBob.
Have you seen his header photo on Twitter? I don't know if this was already his header photo, actually.
I think it may have been the shared with Schnitz written on it.
Yes.
The man knows his place.
The one thing looking forward for Brisbane, their next couple weeks, well, their next few weeks are actually pretty interesting because they should be favored in their remaining 4 games before the bye, but there are caveats in 3 of them. You have a Q clash, and we know how Suns coaches do in their first Q clash.
Excellently, and that's a Sunday nighter. I'm so looking forward to that.
A trip to the Adelaide Oval, where they've usually struggled.
Yeah.
Richmond at home, whatever. At Hawthorn, oh, but it's at Marvel, never mind. If that game was at the G instead of Marvel, I'd say they'd have something to be afraid of, but it's at Marvel, they'll be fine. Moving on, Friday night, St. Kilda at Port Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval, 2:40 a.m. here, 5:40 a.m. on the East Coast, 7:10 p.m. locally, 7:40 p.m. Eastern Time. This is a Fox Sports 2 game with the 5th place Power at 4-2, 13th place against the 13th place Saints, who have lost back-to-back games since the...
Gather round.
But remember, they did not win at the Adelaide Oval during...
Gather round.
They won at Norwood.
In a weird game where they only scored their first goal just ahead of halftime. That was a fun one. Dad and I had fun watching that one together.
You know what else was fun? The meetings between these teams each of the last 2 years. This year, it's a double-up.
Yeah, a lot of double-ups in this round.
I think I counted 6.
Yeah, there are 6. So Essendon and Collingwood, they'll be rematching round 17. That's a bit early for that. GWS and Brisbane, round 22 at the Gabba. Port and the Saints, round 7 for the 3rd straight year. And then round 16 will be the return leg at Marvel. Last year at Marvel in round 7, Port won by 7, took the lead for good with about 15 minutes left. And then after the Saints had gotten one back, Charlie Dixon had a huge smother right off the goal square. Shades of what he did 2 years prior against Collingwood. I immediately knew that they had won. This was something about which I made a short. I'm not sure if the flashback is something that you got as well, if that stood out to you at all.
I didn't.
Yeah, if Charlie Dixon puts on a smother near the goal line in a tight game, Port's usually going to find a way to win it. He did it on Jordan Roughhead in 2021, and then Josh Battle.
What's a battle?
In 2023. That was also a fantastic 4-quarter game, that round 7 affair for Jason Horne-Francis. Had a huge goal where he wheeled around, straightened up, massive kick, and cut to the loading dock.
Oh, that was that game. A quick look back to round 7 last year. You had this one as the opener, the Adelaide Collingwood finale, a couple of great individual performances with Charlie Curnow outscoring the Eagles and Tom Hawkins kicking 8, including I think it was 4 or 5 in the first quarter, clouding Brandon Zirk-Thatcher. And you had the Sydney Derby in that round as well.
Oh my gosh.
But I think back, whenever I refer to these two teams, to their 2022 meeting.
The last we've seen of Cairns AFL.
Yeah, the Saints didn't sell off any games anywhere again this year, which,
good on them,
I guess. But on the other hand, if you want to, expand your footprint, find somewhere to make, your territory. And I think Cairns is a better place to try to do that than, China.
I still would prefer the Suns to be the ones to take games other spots in Queensland, but they've got the Darwin deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, that game at Kazali Stadium in 2022, the epitome of Cairns footy, a Robbie Gray behind with 31 seconds left, won it for the Power by the final score of
St. Kilda 4-18-42, defeated by Port Adelaide 5-13-43. You listed this game as horrendous wetness. I mean, I was horrendously wet watching this. There was some bad wet weather footy in Brisbane last week. No, this was on a different level. This was both terrible conditions and just a terribly played game to the point that it became an amazing viewing experience because everything about it was so bad.
It's one of those like integer underflow situations where it gets so bad that it goes from 1 all the way back up to 255.
I ranked this game as number 5.
Damn it, the same again.
Well, shit. What if we just rank them all the same? I mean, it's possible.
Should we just check each other's now?
No, couldn't put this any lower, but I'm not that excited for it. I think this is the least excited I've been for a Thursday or Friday night game so far this season.
We still need to figure out whether Port can be consistent, but that's really a matter of doing things away from South Australia
and doing things against top flight teams, which even if the Saints are good, and I think they're better than we've seen, the Saints are not a top flight team.
Now, if the Saints do manage to win this game, which the odds makers don't like the idea because Port are currently favored by 20.5, then yeah, this game will shoot up in the interest ranks and just so much more will be asked of Ken Hinckley and staff. It's clearly below that top tier, but this is one where the result will dictate a lot of questions either way.
The Saints winning would be funnier than, I think, Richmond beating Melbourne. It would be less surprising, but it would be funny. Travis Boak should be back from his back injury. Jason Horton-Francis finished last week with a hamstring injury. Should be good to go, we think. Charlie Dixon got managed against Collingwood, so he's back in. Jordan Sweet was fine as a ruckman, but didn't do anything else, so you probably take him out and just move Ivan Soldo back into the middle.
Yeah, he was subbed out as well, and Soldo has some more full field ability as well. We've seen what he can do forward, help supplement the back as well. You could even throw him and Ryan Burton, between 50s at times. Burton has shown that ability, especially with longer kicking.
Yeah, I just think of Burton as moving the ball out of the back more than anything else.
He's got that longer goal kicking ability, though, so if you need some bulk in the back, you can have Soldo help with that for sure.
Francis Evans and Dylan Williams have been good down on the twos. I guess maybe you can move like Jackson Mead out. I think Lockie Jones gets dropped. I like him. Hopefully he just needs a week or two to get right.
That would be a clear case of where Dylan Williams gets in and then maybe Frank Evans for Jackson Mead.
For the Saints, Paddy Dow, who had a minor ACL injury during the preseason but is good to go now, should be his club debut. Could be as the sub.
And then Max King is probable to return from his knee injury.
So in that case, who goes out? I think it would be hard to take out Tim Emery or Anthony Caminiti. So I didn't think Zach Jones would be the type to be subbed out, but he has yet to play, I think, more than 61% of the game this year I saw.
And that's the figure I saw, which kind of surprised me. I think he's just kind of in the doghouse. I don't know.
But in that case, he's a type to maybe go out. Maybe he's saved, though, because Dan Butler did his hamstring.
Possible.
Eyes on a potential debut for Ari Stonemaker, a later round pickup who Saints fans have been hyping up since the preseason. Would not mind the Saints continuing to go young with how Hugo Garcia kept things up in his first time of the 22. Stonemaker's more of a key defender. Moves well for someone of his size. 194 centimeters, so that would be, I guess, like 6'4", 6'5".
I don't know. Because I think do communist measurements.
He's got a ridiculously long kick. I know that. So I'm thinking maybe Zane Cordy, who's out down a couple of weeks.
I think he says in. I don't know who else comes out.
I mean, Josh Battle would be a more like for like in terms of build, but I'd put Battle above.
Battle was down last week. I mean, frankly, everyone except for Garcia, Hill, and Windhager was awful last week.
But I would rank Battle above Cordy usually in their one-on-one defender hierarchy for the Saints.
Yeah, Cordy did only have 4 touches. I mean, you always wonder about like Caminiti, Filippo.
Filippo's the one by whom I've been least impressed this year. And with Caminiti being on the younger side, I guess maybe he could make way for King. Although I'm very much an Anthony Caminiti believer and would want King to help be part of accelerating play into the forward 50 at times as well. We've seen both the King twins have this ability as running half boards. And if King's knee is all right, I'd like to see that from him. The Saints had so much of an issue last week accelerating play when it came from the back. This was a big sticking point for us in our commentary. When they didn't win the ball out of the center and they were thoroughly beaten by the Dogs at center clearance this past week, then they weren't able to start plays with the speed that they like. So if you have King with some of that acceleration and get some longer kicks that can cause a bit of chaos. And I also do like the Saints' chances to have a better game at the center square against Port than they did against the Dogs, just because, well, who's going to beat what the Dogs did this past week? Amazing what they did even without Libba. And that whole younger midfield mix for Port has been down the past couple weeks, actually.
If I'm Port Adelaide, my whole game plan in the D50 involves shutting down Tim Membry, because the less he gets the ball, the less effective the Saints are. Is Brandon Zerk-Thatcher the right type to do that? Or maybe that would be a Saba? Yeah, I think a Saba for him, a Lear for King. Also, that 20.5 point line, just because of the way the Saints play, I would drop that to about 14.5. Will Ross Ball rear its ugly head in Adelaide? Is there any other head to Ross Ball that's not ugly? Is there any other head that ever gets reared besides an ugly one? You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How do you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
We continue here without a raccoon present, but Grian's tail looks enough like a raccoon that it could fool a lot of people. Not us, though. He is on Instagram at @catnamed_Grian, and maybe you'll see some of his more recent shenanigans there. I am on Twitter at Castle Media. Identity theft is not a joke, Benjamin. I am at Castle Media. I'm at Benjamin HK01. Collectively, we're on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Who knows where we'll pop up next? At Americans Footy. Let's not waste any more time. North and Adelaide in our first Tasmanian game of the year out of Blundstone Arena. Weird to see North hosting the Anzac Round Tasmanian affair. That's been a standard for the Hawks for a while. I looked it up. In fact, this is the first time that Hawthorn are not going to be at Utah's stadium within a week of Anzac Day in a decade, COVID notwithstanding. Well, I'm wondering, although being a couple days after the actual Anzac Day, I don't know if it really has an effect, but maybe they think, well, Hawthorn's games will all draw pretty well down here anyway. North's usually don't, so maybe if we stick them on a holiday, they'll draw better than usual. I feel like this is one where we could have differences in our rankings. Possibly. 7. Fuck, I was hoping for like the Family Guy 7-6. I almost moved this up to 6 with some news about another game. But yeah, I stuck this one at 7 simply because I can't get that excited over any game involving North. There have been a couple times where I thought, hey, this could be interesting, and then it ends up sucking. So I'm just gonna keep my expectations low. The only reason I don't have this lower is because if they win, then oh my goodness, then it'll be fucking hilarious. And Matthew Nix's seat will reach boiling point. Yeah, they may just fire him on the tarmac. Or maybe they'll do the Herm Edwards, fire him on the field, even though they had just signed him to a 2-year extension. These extensions for Nix and Longmire just give off some weird vibes. What the Crows do have going for them, what the Dog doing, better team on paper and have won 5 straight head-to-head since 2021. Last year, at the Adelaide Oval in round 16, they won by 66 through domination for stoppages. Ben Keys found the ball everywhere, and Mitch Hinge stepped up in defense, whereas Luke McDonald did not. Amazingly, Luke McDonald has not lost a defensive one-on-one this year. He is the only player other than Sam Taylor to have faced at least 10 defensive one-on-ones this year and won every single one. And this came from the top deck. That Luke McDonald stat, I could not believe that. I mean, he's more just giving away free kicks and bad turnovers. Giving away free kicks doesn't count as losing a one-on-one, right? Doesn't? I don't know. But he's definitely turning the ball over. So like I said, this game would be funny if North wins. You think the Crows should win. I can't get more excited about it because of this. I could even consider dropping this game down lower to like 8. But I don't know, there's something about this one and just
what the Crows have been this season. And I feel bad because I like the Crows. I like their fans. But it's got to happen to someone, and rather you than me, which is also the name of a Rick Ross album, I think.
Oh. George Wardlaw should be back in after getting managed. I found it to be very weird timing if you at least want to win a game. I still also find it weird that Wardlaw would line up so much at halfback, whereas he and Harry Sheasel probably both belong in the middle.
Think of the Joseph DeCruz self-portrait, the one that was like used for all those old memes, like, my milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, but in Old English. Like, would you use that as a placemat? I mean, yes, it works as a placemat, but it's got better uses. I use this reference because I just don't care about the Mona Lisa, except for the way it kind of helped bankrupt Nauru.
I feel like Australians would know about that. Teaching Americans about Nauru and Leonardo, A Portrait of Love.
Oh, it's a fun one.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
A country losing a ton of money on a failed musical. Anyway, Wardlaw's back in. He's 0-13. Like, Eddie Ford has a win.
And he is questionable with a hip injury. He's been one of the brighter spots for North this year. Just, we know what he can do in the forward 50.
There was an article, I think, on the AFL website.
Oh, this one about, like, minimum 50 games.
With all of the very depressing stats about like North players' individual records, of the 8 players with the lowest winning percentage, currently listed players that have played at least 50 games, 6 of them are currently with North, and a 7th is Ben Mackay, who was with North until this year. And if you lower that cutoff to 10 games,
it's like all North, isn't it?
No, it's all North and West Coast.
Ah, right. Red Bazzo and a couple others there.
And then, Ben Mackay and then Jack Mahoney. It's not Monty, it's Mahoney. Or he's on the Suns rookie list. But
regardless,
yeah, so Wardlaw 0-13, Eddie Ford 1-27, some other pretty bad ones. Bailey Scott 974-1, Tom Powell 644-1.
I feel genuinely bad for these dudes.
Luke Davies-Uniacke 1872-1. Jai Simpkin, who he has not played well this year. 37-101-1. I mean, we knew about like Eddie Ford's, but I didn't know about the others. I hope they know the words to their song. We had joked like that, at the end when the team the team sings like North Melbourne will be premiers, just you wait and see.
North Melbourne will be premiers in 3093.
Well, no, you had said 2033, and now I think after what we've seen the last few weeks, I think we can push that back to 2043.
3093.
If they do at some point win a flag in a year ending with 3, it would be really awesome. I was just surprised by one thing. It's not surprising, like the idea of Tyler Sellers getting sent back to the twos because he ain't ready.
I would hope then that Curtis Taylor gets more of a shot forward because he's got that vertical ability. Even though you wouldn't have like a second tall, it's not like Sellers was effective enough to warrant his inclusion. So Taylor along with Ford, I could really get behind.
Sam Barry and Jordan Butts are both questionable. Barry got subbed out last week with a foot injury. Butts had a hamstring injury. Matt Crouch is back from a suspension. I don't know. I actually thought Lockie Gallant was decent last week, and I would probably keep him in. I did think, as much as I liked his game against Carlton, I thought Luke Nankervis was kind of frantic, and maybe he gets omitted. But despite the injuries, this team is at a point where they probably have more deserving players than roster spots, which is weird for a team that's 1-5.
I really don't know what to make of it right now. I think we'll just continue to learn Matthew Nick's hierarchy throughout the year, see how things could shift. We've yet to see Elliot Himmelberg at the AFL level this year. I would put Gallant ahead of him. I'm waiting for debuts of Billy Dowling and Dan Curtin, but I almost wonder if that'll happen before a new coach is there at this point, just because this is getting ridiculous with how long these guys are waiting.
This would be such a good time to throw Curtin in there.
And Dowling. Crows minus 28.5 as we record on Australian Tuesday night.
Seems legit.
I think there's a lot of variance in this outcome, but I see the Crows winning by more than a couple goals.
Maybe I'd put this line out to like 32.5 at most. This seems like on the lower end of what I'd do. Geelong versus Carrington at the G.
This is my number 2.
Do we have the same fucking thing the whole way through? I think we do.
Okay, wow.
It was not intentional.
Let's just compare right now. Do we have the exact same?
Okay, do you have Freo and the Bulldogs at number 1?
Yes.
Do you have Gold Coast and West Coast at 6?
Yes.
And do you have Hawthorn and Sydney at 8?
This is incredible.
Wow, this was not intentional.
No, not at all.
I have this.
I did not see your rankings at all, and I did mine second.
We're gonna have to try this again next week now.
Yeah, and I hope for variance then, because there's a lot more to talk about then. But first versus fourth, the 6-0 Cats with one of their home games at the G where they'll be outnumbered.
I think it'll be about 50-50. I think I still won't be happy about it, but I think it'll be 43-57.
And then the Blues coming off their defeat of the Giants, where they just physically dominated in the midfield. That's what worries me about this game for the Cats, is if Pat Cripps and Sam Walsh
that was like a 99th percentile performance from those two.
Yes, but the Cats have a lesser midfield than the Giants do.
Yes, but they have depth. So as long as they don't go off like Libba, I think it's going to be, this is a game that depth is going to have to win. These teams met at round 2 last year. Was that a Thursday nighter? I think it was. It was a Thursday or Friday. I'm pretty sure it was a Thursday.
I think the Cats opened, Friday, Thursday?
Carlton won by 8. It was a really bad game from Cam Guthrie. Jeremy Cameron kicked 6. Charlie Curnow kicked 5. Adam Saad.
Woof.
And Jesse Motlop.
Yay.
Good games. For the Cats, we know there's going to be at least one change for sure with Tom Stewart out concussed. Do you just bring the managed Zach Toohey back in, or do you go with Connor O'Sullivan and play another tall?
I like the move of O'Sullivan.
Yeah, I think as much as I also like the idea of Toohey playing well against the Blues, I do think he's probably the weaker link at this point. Reece Stanley, I would guess he comes back in for Toby Conway. Although I think you could make an argument to play both. I just don't know how you accommodate him. So I think it's just like Rock, Mark Blitzovs, Sam DeConing takes a couple D50 hitouts, and Tom Hawkins in the forward 50.
I imagine that there will be opportunities for the brothers to play on each other. That'll be fun.
I need another Sam DeConing, like he gave at the end of the 2022 win over them.
I'm expecting Sam to give up a free kick in the goal square to Tom. You know they're going to get physical when they play against each other.
I am excited, though, about suffering from success. I don't know if Gary Rowan gets in. Coming off his back injury, he's available. Cam Guthrie's available. So my guess is you get 2 or 3 changes. Guthrie for Jai Clark. You get O'Sullivan or Toohey for Stewart. You get Stanley for Conway. Do you get any others?
How do you fit in anybody else?
Exactly. Unless you're managing someone. The best thing about having 30-ish guys available, Jed Buse is an AFL caliber player and doesn't have a spot.
Mitch Hardy is looking like he's AFL caliber after serving a good amount of time in the twos, really close to a full season now, considering he was a mid-season pickup.
Someone has an ingrown hair, you can manage them.
Does this scream late change?
It doesn't scream it, it mutters it.
Like Alan Rickman is Professor Snape. Late change.
No, just quietly, hand over your mouth, late change. I don't think it's going to happen, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Blues injury concerns continue. Zach Williams suffered a knock to his Achilles and was subbed out. And Jordan Boyd played quite well one-on-one against Toby Green, whose suspension was upheld.
That just happened while we were, doing our break. I thought his was much less likely to stay than Hogan.
Clearly,
I went 0 for 2 on that. Once he's up in the air at that point, though, what's he supposed to do?
Too late, I guess.
Guess so.
Now, Williams has his Achilles injury, and then Jacob Wiedering, maybe something with his quad as well.
I think Wiedering's more likely to play just because I didn't notice anything with him, but I certainly wouldn't mind not facing him. This could turn into a just whoever kicks straighter wins, super high-scoring game,
in which case,
I don't know.
Well, we're both tipping the Blues.
Oh, yeah. Well, I automatically do. But I look at this, kind of as this is a chance for Tom Hawkins to show he's still got something left in the tank.
After going goalless and not being involved really in the past couple games. Just a quiet couple weeks for him.
Yeah, and another chance for Jeremy Cameron, who has played well in big games at the G. If Michael Voss wants to make any more changes, unfortunately,
Orazio Fantasia
would be a candidate to get dropped.
Well, it's definitely not going to be Corey Durden with few touch impact that he's had.
He wasn't at the front of your mind during this past week's game, but he was. But then there were moments was oh yeah, Corey Durden, huh? How about that? Good VFL performers: Jackson Binns, Alex Chinkata, Ashton Moore, Harry Lemmy, who that's my first time hearing about him, and Alex Murkov. even with their injuries, they've got a lot of options as well. Any hunches here, or I'm just personally, I would be surprised if Wiedering doesn't play.
If Williams is out, really a couple options there. Never thought of Chinkata as the big one-on-one guy, and with Nick Newman still being a plenty capable kick out of 50, I would think that if Williams is out, maybe this is finally the opportunity for Jackson Binns. Geelong favored by 2.5. No,
I would have this is not just me being skeptical. I would favor Carlton. Like, I give Geelong realistically, like a 40% shot of winning this game, 40 to 45.
And it's scary to think that even with how many of their supposed best the Blues are without.
I mean, I think that's a fair assessment, right?
Maybe Tom ends up replicating what Sam did in September of 2022. Would you even mind if Tom DeConing wore the cup like a hat?
That would be like the only thing I'd be happy about if they won. I think I wouldn't even be happy for Sam Doherty because he's out injured. Maybe I'd be happy for like Jesse Motlop, but
I'd be happy for Cripps and Walsh, I'd say.
I wouldn't really. I like them, and they both played outrageously well this past week. Now, between our last recording of this one, I went back and watched the rest of that game, and just some of Cripps' stuff through contact in the middle of the field was fucking unbelievable.
Why does my first thought see just like a white guy barrel through people like that? Why do I just think Toby Gerhard or
Hillis?
I was about to fucking say cover your Peyton Hillis.
What would the footy equivalent of Peyton Hillis being a cover athlete be?
Jack Anthony? 50 goals 1 year for Collingwood, couldn't get close to matching that for the rest of his career.
Now, just like, which current player making the cover of an AFL game? Maybe Paul Curtis? He has to be from a pretty lousy team. And someone who's kind of a flash in the pan on a bad team.
Dylan Moore?
He's a pretty established player.
I guess that it has to be someone younger, yeah. So maybe Curtis then?
But I think Curtis is going to be a sustained success.
He's been around too long. Noah Long?
If he like goes off and has like a Linsanity run, absolutely. But I think he's going to be around longer.
Hopefully he doesn't.
Unintended.
Hopefully he doesn't flame out the same way that Peyton Hillis did. I mean, if he saves people from drowning, props to him.
A life well lived.
Yeah, Peyton Hillis has done that.
All right, moving on to what we both picked as our favorite game of the round.
The Len Hall Tribute game. Freo and the Bulldogs at Optus. This has been an Anzac round standard as of late. 9th versus 8th, both 3-3 after blowouts in opposite directions this past week. A derby loss for the Dockers, a 10-goal win over the Saints for the Western Bulldogs. This is a 5:30 p.m. bounce in Burswood, I guess. So 7:30 p.m. for the Victorian crowd. For Americans, 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific on the morning of Saturday the 27th. Last year's Len Hall Tribute game ended up being the Lobster Tears affair.
Oh, that was awesome. Oh, shit, I forgot to mention. I'm just going to throw it in now. Other Geelong thing, before we get too carried away on this game. Max Holmes is here to stay, officially. Sticking around through 2028. Let's fucking go.
Have fun pursuing Baslenka, Collingwood.
Yeah, I guess that's how you kind of tie this back into this game. Anyway, the Lobster Tears game, he was awesome. Also, Bailey Williams had 3 goals.
I mean, Rory Lobb himself only kicked 1-3 for that game, but just occupied so much attention.
He took up a lot of space, both on the field and mentally, and just everything kind of played off of him.
He was the center of attention for reasons the Dockers would like to forget. And
I could not believe just how immature they were. He was our main character for that round, right?
Was our main character for that round actually Nick Dacos?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I think that's valid for the Anzac winning performance there, but Rory Lobb was probably a close second. In round 16 of the reverse fixture last year, it's going to be round 14 this year. Quick turnaround there, double up in 7 weeks this year. But in that game at Marvel last year, it was tight until the Bulldogs had 5 goals in a row, kind of in the middle of the fourth quarter, as Marcus Montebelli had his typical best on-ground performance, and the Dogs came away with a 29-point victory. Freo's defenders struggled one-on-one, and that has not been something that's happened much this year. Down game by comparison for Alex Pierce this past week against Jake Waterman.
Look, as Alex Pierce goes, the Freo defense goes. I think that's pretty well established as of now.
Some people would probably peg Luke Ryan similarly, but I think Ryan is more in terms of the movement out of defense, where if they coordinate things properly, his first kick can set up some really strong and fast rebounds. Hopefully the speed and finesse, especially in terms of forward half play, returns for Frio this week in the forms of Michael Frederick and Sam Switkowski. Learned to pronounce his name, Gerard Healy. Hayden Young is probable to get through a hamstring issue that caused him to miss some time at the end of the Western Derby. Would he go to Bontempelli or a returning Liberatore? I would imagine Bont. Though, knowing you, Ethan, you'd make a case for Jack McRae following his performance this past week, getting to the outside.
Yeah, it's tough.
That's the fun part about this midfield battle. These are all players, especially Bontempelli and McRae, who can really wreak havoc getting out into space. Maybe McRae a bit more laterally than Bontempelli. You can add Adam Treloar to that group as well, but he was one of the contested leaders for the Dogs this past week too. Collectively with these midfields, this is one, like how I thought for the Swans and Suns last week, this could be like leave a crater in the middle of Optus Stadium type stuff if Hayden Young and Caleb Sarong and Andrew Brayshaw are on top of their game. And they'll have no lack of motivation. Elsewhere for the Dockers, though, changes are needed after how flat they fell in the Derby. Matt Johnson could probably use a stint on the sidelines, bring Neil Erasmus more into the middle, let Michael Walters have more of that run through the middle as well. I hope Nathan O'Driscoll is ready to go soon, if not this week, to occupy that other wing spot and kind of force Justin Longmuir's hand in bringing Erasmus in. Of course, inevitably, he or Jager O'Meara will be the sub, and I imagine Will Brodie gets overlooked again.
I really like the idea, although I think this is going to be a game that's predicated on play in the middle, so maybe it's not the right game to do it. I really like the idea of having Jeremy Sharp on one wing and Will Brodie on the other, and that has nothing to do with them both being former Suns and everything to do with them just being compelling, good players.
Lastly, the obvious one here, you'd imagine Matt Tapperner returns with Jai Amos concussed. That was a loss that predicated how the Dockers would suffer for the entire Derby when Amos was lost to concussion in the middle of the first quarter.
Yeah, getting Switkowski back, Frederick back will help significantly with these things because really once they lost Amos, they were down their three best forwards. With the Bulldogs, Libba should be back from his concussion. Who comes out, though? You have that. You have, does Jamari Ugle-Hagan get back from whatever personal thing took him away last week?
If so, how does Rory Lobb factor in?
I think you got to try to find a way to keep Lobb in with how well he played last week, even though, again, he didn't have like a huge goal-kicking role. Just everything stemmed off of him. I thought he was really significant.
We've talked about how freakishly tall this team could go and for it to still work with the down performances by comparison of Lockie Bramble, Jimmy O'Donnell, and Latham Vandermeer.
Yeah, I think Vandermeer would be the first forward to come out. I would throw Caleb Daniel in for one of Bramble or O'Donnell, and I would elevate Riley Sanders out of the sub role. I mean, if you keep Vandermeer in, he could be the sub. Or maybe you let Harvey Gallagher be the sub. I don't know. It's weird to have this many list questions after such a convincing win.
With Gallagher being part of that midfield half-forward group and having a down couple weeks after a hot start, I wouldn't mind that sub role for him. It would also allow for kind of the other inclusions there to have a little bit more room to breathe at times.
I mean, you could also drop James Harms into the sub role. I'd be in favor of that. Not that Harms played poorly last week at all, and I really liked what he did concurrently with Garcia, but I still think Harms would fit the sub role well. Maybe Buku Kamas has played well, but could he be a sub?
And what would you do in terms of defense that just had like one of the talls who's not going forward take that spot?
Yeah, God,
it would be tough with Aaron Naughton having kicked 6 the prior week. Would you throw Sam Darcy back?
I guess this is where everything gets tough. Maybe I'd make Darcy the sub.
Whoa.
Or Riley West. What about Riley West as a sub? See, this is where you remember that, like, it's not just Luke Beveridge. It's also, like, just a strangely constructed list that I think any coach would have some difficulty figuring out. But I just, where I stand on this. I think Beveridge is the biggest issue. I don't know how I'd manage this. And I hate saying that, like, the only solution I have is I wouldn't be doing what he's doing.
But you wouldn't be doing what he's doing.
Yeah. I don't know where I'd figure this one out, but Rory Lobb certainly made things a tougher decision with how well he played this past week. Frio's favored by 2.5. I think this game is basically a toss-up because of the location. Frio were not ready to do this past week. They didn't respond well to back-to-back close losses, games they could have easily won. So how will they respond to a game where they just got shitted on by a team that they would have expected to beat?
A team that they should have beaten. I do not care.
I guess the 2.5 point line favoring the Dockers has probably a lot to do with this game being in Perth. Yeah?
I think... Or maybe other people are just realizing that Luke Beveridge will make the wrong decisions.
I think I'm tipping Frio to win this because I'd just be surprised if they lost a fourth straight. I don't know. I think this game is such a toss-up, and there's so much riding on it. I feel I'm hot seat coaches, two very mercurial teams
Right next to each other in the middle of the ladder. Drama last year.
It's funny because last time I tried to get all excited for a Frio game, it ended up being the shit. I can't imagine we get burned again. And even if we do, and this game ends up sucking, we'll get a lot of takeaways out of it.
And that's why we have it at number one. It could be the worst played game of the season, and we'll still have plenty of list and strategy related takeaways.
The first game Sunday, we both ranked 6th. We could have ranked it anywhere from 6th to 8th, I think. And this one did lose a little bit of its intrigue with some news we got today, but it is the Coast Clash. I hope Dwayne Russell is on this game so we can talk about the Gold Coast and the West Coast and Mac Andrews and Jed Walters.
That's more of a Jared Healy one with those.
Okay, but the Gold Coast and the West Coast is definitely a Dwayne Russell thing, right?
This screams Dwayne Russell, Kelly Underwood, and the one saving grace being Lynchy.
The fun thing about this game is all of the young pieces. The not fun thing is that first off, it's the Eagles outside of Perth. Second, Harley Reid is getting managed, which just after these 2 games he just played, that really sucks. I'm nearly certain this was something that upper management had carved out before the season began.
I would have loved
to him at Geelong, just saying. We'll treat you right.
I would have loved to have seen him try and go through Matt Rowell in the middle.
Yes. Thank fuck this is a rematch.
We're being robbed of that right in front of us here, and he better fucking be in round 21 when they're in Perth. I imagine he plays all the games at home.
As long as he's healthy.
I mean, obviously, yeah. So why are the Suns favored by 29.5? Because they performed at home.
And because, no, Harley Reid. I think his presence would probably take this down about a goal. Yeah?
I'd say so, even with the Suns' struggles in defense. The Gold Coast strengths in the midfield also add up to a situation where the Eagles will have a much tougher time controlling that part of the ground, and you may just see them reverting to their old ways and just keeping things slow and on the outside. I hope they don't do that. I hope they really try to work through it and try to play to their strengths. But I could see things turning real sour real fast, like it did in their 70-point loss in Perth last year, where the Suns' midfield dominance and consistent intercepting meant that they blew out the game with an 8-1 second quarter.
How does Damian Hardwick and, the other parts of the Suns' brain trust manage things after a loss where they looked immature both in terms of skill and composure?
I don't think they're going to drop any of the new draft class. I think you're mainly thinking about Jake Rogers there. And
I think Ethan Reed is a possibility.
Actually, yeah. Rogers, I would think he gets a second game, but all of a sudden, maybe this could just be an illiterate game altogether with no Reed on either side. Ethan Reed was the most immature player of this past round. Even more than Toby Green, who kept his perfect record, by the way. 23 reports, never gotten off. Does this make him a bad bloke?
I guess so. What does that have to do with this? How did you tie this in?
Because I said Reed was the most immature player this past round, even more so than Toby.
Oh yeah, Toby wasn't immature. It was just a skill error. I also have been very unimpressed with Charlie Ballard. I'm going to keep talking about how Caleb Graham should get another chance.
Yeah, they're not going to take out Ballard.
Sam Collins hasn't been amazing or anything.
Yeah, they're not going to take him out.
I know he's not coming out, but I still would like to find a way to get Graham in there. Rory Atkins, Joel Jeffrey, and Ben Long have been good down in the VFL.
Joel Jeffrey, please.
I don't think Ben Long has been cast properly. They kind of played him up forward. Yeah, like why are you like to combine him at forward and Jack Lukosius at halfback? Although again, we liked Lukosius at halfback. He was our polished turd for the week. He was good. What about the Eagles other than no Harley? On one hand, I think we're all being deprived by him being out. On the other,
We're going to learn about the Eagles' depth, especially after a game where the entire team performed.
it was like this past week was the first time in a long time that we looked at them and it was something other than Tim Kelly, Jeremy McGovern, Elliot Yo, Harley Reid. I mean, well, Reid obviously a more recent one, but like other than that, the same guys that were good for them in both good and bad games last year.
As of now, the Eagles are being forced into a change because Tom Barris has yet to face the tribunal for his dangerous tackle suspension. By the time this is uploaded, we'll know whether or not he got off or not. If Barris is out, then a lot more importance there for Josh Rotham, and Jeremy McGovern will have to stick to a one-on-one assignment more. Otherwise, I'd love to see Leo Ryan come back in. He's been tried out as a ball-moving halfback, and if you do put him there with occasional stints up forward, it'll allow for Ryan Merrick and Noah Long to stay and have not been.
Yeah, I also think like just with what Jake Waterman gives you, I think it would be a little redundant to have them both up there.
It's tough to make changes, but with Ryan pressing his case and with Dom Sheed kind of lurking there as a hardly used sub, and with Jermaine Jones and Zay True making their cases to return for the Waffle, some tough decisions are going to need to be made. I would love for Zane True to finally get another chance. He was an exceptional substitute in that Round 23 win last year against Marvel Stadium and has yet to see an AFL oval since. Does not sense make.
Anything else about this one? I mean, like I said, rematch round 21. Hopefully we don't get deprived of Reid and Rowell, yeah.
Well, not just Reid and Rowell, but Reid, Jinby, Kelly, and Yo versus Rowell, Anderson, Miller, and Closey. Is that how highly we regard Sam Closey already?
You know I'm a fan.
Actually, Closey can do more on the outside. I'd say in the middle, Will Graham because of how eager he is to tackle. You thought Rowell was a tackler right away, and then you see what Will Graham has done already. This should be a physical one. Hugh Clash this next week should be physical. I want the Suns to just keep bringing the heat, keeping everything as contested as possible through the middle. I want to see some tackle records. Anzac round finishes with the Hawks and Swans at the G, and Buddy's going to be there. Some sort of, I think, like club president function. He will be honored in some way. Not one to ever take the spotlight off the oval. I guess it's similar to another legendary goal kicker who finished up his career at the Swans in that respect, to Tony Lockett. Wonder if the two of them ever talked about stuff like that. 4 p.m. Melbourne time, 2 a.m. Eastern Sunday morning in the United States, 11 p.m. Pacific Saturday night on Fox Soccer Plus. It's 1-5 versus 5-1, but this matchup always has some sort of spice to it. Actually, never mind. Last year, the Swans just demolished the Hawks by 81 points.
I can think of a game where the Swans lost by 81.
Oh yeah, the grand final. And that round 6 meeting was just as ugly. But Hawthorn last year against the Swans in round 2 sent so many numbers forward right away. The Hawk Highway was a real thing for them at the start of the season, and it meant that they got so exposed on the rebound, and their numbers weren't great going out of the defensive 50 either. I expect this game to... Actually, I have no expectations for this game whatsoever, because I don't know how long the Hawks are going to be able to stick with Sydney. Going to be like their Anzac round meeting in Launceston 2 years ago, where Hawthorn led 32-0 17 minutes in, and then got outscored 9-1 in the fourth and lost by 41.
They're not like notoriously slow starters anymore, Sydney, and Hawthorn isn't a team that's roared out of the gates, so...
I mean, Hawthorn did lose their first 5 opening terms of the year before facing North this past week.
I thought it was funny towards the end of the broadcast. Was it Healy who was talking about how, they're about to get these players back and look, I think, yes, it'll make them better, but won't instantly turn them into a finals team.
They're not going to be contending for a spot this year.
However,
Will Day's inclusion does mean a lot.
And for that to come when Connor Nash conveniently started playing a lot better too. This is a team that I've said, they're building from the middle out, and I like what they're doing in the middle.
And Day's got some flexibility to go into defense as well. That's going to be important, just having that extra one-on-one defensive ability from Day.
Might also get Mitch Lewis back, which hopefully help a team that, until last week, really struggled to kick straight. unfortunately not getting, I think, their most exciting player back in Changquoth Jat. He's got now a minor quad injury and didn't even get into the VFL game.
We might need to pass the glass bones and paper skin title to him. Fuck.
I was born with glass bones and paper skin.
What about paper bones and glass skin? That sounds... Is that more painful? I think it is.
We may need to have both monikers then.
Yeah, it sucks. I like him a lot.
Dude even responded to our messages.
Jai Sarong probably gets omitted, but I mean, who else do you take out? Like, Seamus Mitchell was pretty good. Do you manage Jarman Impey or one of the other veterans? I don't know.
I mean, how much do you manage it all? They did win, and they played like a whole team unit should.
But if you're getting both Day and Lewis in, a second guy besides Sarong would have to go out.
Henry Hustwaite, the sub the past 2 weeks.
That's the easy answer. I want to mention, and I think I talked about it the other day, Harry Morrison was really good.
Harry!
So there are building blocks for Hawthorn.
I never thought Morrison would spend that much time in the flanks at halfback, but he had that a lot, especially on the left-hand side of the oval, and then still had good positioning as a forward. I like those full field guys that like him and Connor McDonald and Cam McKenzie, just all the M's.
I think it's not likely they win this game. I think the Swans will come in with the Richmond game, their most recent trip to the G, fresh in their minds. I could see a world where Hawthorn wins the midfield battle and possibly does enough. I think it's more likely than North winning. I just think this game is less intriguing than that, just because, I mean, I don't think they're going to be, I mean, what sort of like great revelations are we going to have?
I'm drawing a blank here, just like I'm drawing a blank as to what might change for the Sydney Swans. If it's not broken, why bother to fix it? Brody Grundy versus Lloyd Meek ought to be fun.
I think outside of the center circle, Grundy kicks his ass, and I like Lloyd Meek, but outside of the center circle,
yeah, probably, but 2 goals, 2 assists for Meek this past week showed more of that full field ability. I like that part of things a lot.
Maybe the Swans manage someone this week. I don't know.
Well, some questions with minor injuries for Nick Blakey and Tom McCartan.
But both finished their games. Lewis Melican was cleared of injuries. Was he the one who got subbed out?
He was.
All right.
And he's been a very effective one-on-one defender like we knew he'd be.
I just don't see much about this game that's going to change my perception of things. Maybe Braden Campbell was the sub. Maybe you pull him out and bring someone else in, or maybe you switch him and Melican around. I don't know.
Campbell's more of an outside player with just really long field kicking ability. So if Blakey does need to rest, then Campbell could help with some of that run and just lengthy kicking. That's what I like about Campbell. That's why I had him labeled as my sleeper. He's got the accuracy as well to do some good things as a half forward flank.
So this is a game where Blakey would absolutely eat, just knowing that usually the middle's open with Hawthorn. And I think they've been prone to those sort of attacks. And I don't know who they'd really be able to put on him, like which of their half forwards you have go to him. I mean, maybe, actually, you know what? And that's the guy I put McGinnis on. I think I put him on Blakey instead of like Heaney or Warner.
Yeah, have someone run with Nick Blakey and see how that limits him.
He is not their best player,
but he is their most damaging on the ground when he gets
most damaging, I think most transformative, like highest quality of touches. Do those things make sense? They should.
Highest,
if you watch the Swans, these things make sense.
Biggest ground impact per touch, I'll say that.
Oh, that for sure, but I think it's more than just that.
It's hard to define or even quantify, but when you watch them, you know it when you see it. He's just a lizard.
Swans favored by 17.5. I think this is a little lower than it should be. I would push this out another goal. I think this is just a little too reactionary to Hawthorn beating North.
Unless they know something that we don't about management of players, unless Jonte Porter leaks some information to them.
Oh, it took me a minute. I got the reference now. I think lines I might take this week.
Sydney to cover seems like an
Sydney to cover,
Carlton money line.
Yeah, but that one, Sydney to cover, maybe Melbourne to cover, maybe Brisbane money line, maybe Port to cover. I don't know, because Ross Ball can make that just an ugly game.
It's what we say about Ross Ball every week. But the only thing Ross Ball teaches you is how you play against Ross Ball.
All right, well, With that, I think it's time for our main character picks for this week, and I'm excited for this one because I've been saving one up here.
Main character will be one of the last post trumpeters either flubbing or like fainting. I hate thinking about like solemn occasions like this, but all the eyes are on you there.
I mean, I think of like the fake sign language dude at Nelson Mandela's funeral.
Oh my gosh.
So what if the trumpeter is also the son's trumpeter? That's one possible outcome. I think a reasonable main character pick would also just be the DeConing family. Remember a couple years ago, they got interviewed about like what they did during the game they played against each other. And it was like, yeah, we were just drunk in Bali. We just cheered every time someone scored. They seem like a fun family.
We got to try and meet them when we make our pilgrimage. Now, Ethan, you've been hyping up this main character pick. Do not disappoint.
Dunga.
Huh?
Dunga.
The former Brazilian manager?
Yes, Dunga.
Why?
Either someone's going to get compared to him, or there's going to be a meme of someone resembling him, or he's going to make an appearance at a game. I'm leaving this pretty wide open in terms of how he is going to be the main character this week.
The diminutive defensive midfielder and then manager that he was?
Yes. Maybe a player will get compared to him. Maybe it's a coach.
Well, who would be like a small defensive mid that you could think of there? I mean, like, if Tom Mitchell goes off and has another one of those games like he did from the second quarter on, that could be a very Dunga type thing.
I don't know, but I've just felt really good about this. Something told me.
I feel like we're going to try and shoehorn this into our recap where we're like trying to compare someone to Dunga.
It's going to be like a 5th degree of separation thing.
Do we need a Dunga number?
Like a Kevin Bacon number?
Yeah, like a Bacon number.
Okay. We're on Twitter at Americans Footy.
He's at Castle Media.
You're at Benjamin HK01. This guy I'm pointing to that's chilling next to me is at Cat Named Brian, exclusively on Instagram. We are also on Instagram and YouTube, Americans Footy. Hopefully no more raccoons, yeah?
I was going to say, raccoons are incredibly bright creatures, and that's why they're such a nuisance to humans.
But now, it's on site.